it's okay, cause I'm gon' die for this. I put my mind to this. Watch all these people, how they treat you, got no time for it. I fear no evil, got my demons, I'm just fine with them. And all these people think they know me, it don't matter to me, cause I'm gon' die for this. I put my mind to this. Watch all these people, how they treat you, got no time for it. I fear no evil, got my demons, I'm just fine with them.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the 3 Point Stance. And, it's me, Kaleb the GOAT. We're missing our guy D-Grade today. He had some USFL stuff come up, so, we salute him in his USFL journey, hopefully leading his way back to the NFL. But we have a very special guest for everybody today, former Steelers tight end, Weslye Saunders. How you doing, brother?
Hey. I'm going to give me and you a round of applause right now, man. Appreciate you having me on today, brother. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. I was a big fan of you back when you were with the Steelers. Sadly, you were only with us for a short time for that year in 2011. Then there was a hiccup in 2012 I know of. But man, you were a guy, and Tomlin praised you all over the place for quite some time. It just didn't seem to pan out, and you were in a stacked tight end room with I believe Heath Miller. I think Spaeth was on the team around that time.
Actually, Spaeth had just left.
Oh, he just left. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was? I can't remember who the other tight.
It was me, Heath, David Johnson.
There we go. Yeah,
boy. Yeah. So for a while, it was just us three.
Yeah. I remember Big Dave.
To the next year.
Yeah. That dude was he was a monster. Like you yourself. I mean, you were 270 back then, 6'5". I mean, you weren't in a slouch when it came to the game of tight end. And like I remember you scoring your first touchdown against the Chiefs. That was
yes.
It was a tiptoe catch in the back of the end zone, correct?
Oh yeah. Sunday night football, man. I remember like it was yesterday, and never had I caught that pass before in practice or anywhere else. So the fact that my whole mindset was just being ready just in case.
Yeah,
I think it makes it even more sweet.
Yeah, and if you look at your game style back in 2011, you're kind of the way you played the game. It's like the game shifted with the tight ends. You've seen these more big athletic guys like Darnell Washington, who the Steelers just drafted, for example. It seems like your game is so suited for this day and age right now. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I think you're absolutely right. Even when I came into the league back in 2011 with Coach Daniel, who showed me the ropes, in that tight end room, he made a man out of me. Because after every practice, especially after training camp, after I initially made the team, he was very adamant about one-on-one blocking, being able to block defensive ends. Especially in our conference. So after a hard day's practice, he would have us lining up against Cam Hayward and Ziggy Hood and Brett Kiesel and some of these guys to really hone in on our blocking skills. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if it's the tight end position is predicated on the blocking as much as it was when I was coming into the league.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of talked about like Darnell. I mean, the Steelers are going. Like the league's a passing league right now, and the Steelers or Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, they are doing their thing to bring that smash mouth football back with like the addition of Broderick Jones, the addition of Darnell Washington, who labels himself as the sixth offensive lineman. It's crazy to see. Like I'm excited for the smash mouth football to be back in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely, I can see the shift happening, but of course, Pittsburgh football is predicated around the run game. We do our best when we're able to solidify ourselves on the ground, and so I know Coach Tomlin would prefer that. You got a beast at running back there, so obviously a guy like the new tight end they picked up, I think he's going to eat a lot more once the running game picks up, and of course Pickett is going to have a field day with it once that gets going.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Kenny right here. But we're going to kind of backtrack, and we're going to go back to your Steeler days back in 2011. That was post, the Super Bowl loss against Green Bay. So, I mean, just that year for you, what was that like, and how was the team, and just everything like that?
Well, it was definitely an eye opener, man, and what dreams are made of. Simply because 6-7 months before I even got to the team, I was training out in Dallas, Texas, at the Michael Johnson Performance Facility, and while I was there, the Steelers were playing the Packers in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And me growing up, I'd always been a Packers fan, so I just happened to be in town during that weekend. It was the worst snowstorm in Texas history. I think they got like 10 inches overnight. So, it was a lot going on in Dallas. And I'm tweeting how much praise I have for the Packers football team. And I remember somebody distinctly saying, man, hey, you might want to chill out talking crap about these teams. You might end up on the Steelers. And I was like, man, what are the chances? There's a 1 in 32 chance I end up with these guys. And, of course, 5-6 months later, that's where I was at. And I remember one of the assistants for the Steelers actually calling me out on some of my tweets they had seen months prior. Because, these NFL organizations do their due diligence. So, that was one lesson I had to learn. But, once I arrived in Pittsburgh, man, it was nothing but love. Heath Miller, Earl, one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life, literally. Took me under his wing. It really wasn't as much of a competition as it was a learning curve. And, I'm glad I had him on my side because, on the defensive end, you got your Ike Taylors and your Ryan Clarks and your Troy Palomalus who are already there. And the defense had a different attitude about them that you had better be able to match. And so I think me coming into that organization was the best thing that could have happened for me.
Yeah, and then, obviously, we know you were an undrafted free agent. So, I mean, there was other teams calling around that time. So why Pittsburgh?
Well, it was one of those storied organizations that of course, the history precedes them. But even during the process of me figuring out who I wanted to go to, Coach Daniel was one of the coaches who came down for my pro day down at the University of South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Now, at that point, I had already broken my foot. My draft stock had taken a little bit of a hit, but I was still trying to perform. And he was one of the coaches who came down and wanted to put me through some workouts to see what kind of tight end I was. Now, him knowing that I was hurt, because I actually participated in the pro day on a broken foot. Mm-hmm. So I was just trying to do everything I could. So Coach Daniel knew I was hurt and still decided to put me through one of the toughest workouts I had been through. And I think he was literally trying to test me, to test my toughness, because there was no sense of him feeling sorry for me whatsoever. So I had to not feel sorry for myself. And so when it came time months later, after I'd had my surgery and, the NFL lockout was over, I had a decision to make, and I knew that would be a place where he would push me. Coach like Bruce Arians and Coach Tomlin would be able to get the best out of me. So it was a pretty easy decision.
Yeah. And I know the Steelers have quite the history of going to pro days and taking over player workouts. I want to say our DB coach, he was hands-on with Joey Porter Jr. this year. We had last year, our receivers coach was hands-on with George Pickens last year. He was kind of in the same boat. He was coming off that ACL injury. He did play in that championship game. But they're very adamant about taking – because if – I can't remember – because you had some draft stock going in, mm-hmm. and the injury is what kind of led to you going undrafted, correct?
Actually, no. I missed the entire season, my senior year, for accepting impermissible benefits from boosters and agents as a senior. Yeah, so I was I was actually projected to go first round mm-hmm. Prior to the 2010 season, mm-hmm. and due to the NCAA investigation, I missed my entire senior year. And instead of trying to fight it and come back for an extra year of eligibility, I decided, hey, I didn't get hurt. I'm still the same player that I was before the season, and I decided to take my chances in the NFL draft, and Nike signed me. The executive at Nike still thought that I would go pretty high. So they arranged for me to go out to train in Dallas with Michael Johnson. And, I was going to go to the combine and show off my athletic prowess, which would get me back into the first or early second round. And I get to Dallas and I end up breaking my foot.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, when it rains, it pours. Yeah. It was kind of that situation where I'm also battling off the field issues as well as an injury. So, no one foresaw me going undrafted, including myself. But now, of course, looking back on it, it's one of the best things that happened to me from a development standpoint. And, of course, to the team I ended up on, because I don't know if I would have ended up on the Steelers had I not gone through those struggles.
Yeah, and that's, so that's that. I didn't know that you missed your entire senior year for something that's now legal in
I consider myself
football.
A trailblazer, man. Yeah, I crawled so the other guys could walk.
Yeah, and so I grew up an Ohio State fan, so we had the tattoo gate back in 2012, 2014, or whichever. Yeah. And I mean, they put a heavy foot stomping on Ohio State. Which ultimately led to Urban Meyer, blah, blah, blah. But I do remember that South Carolina team back then. You guys had some guys. I believe Marshawn Lattimore was your running back back then.
Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, man, I it still kind of stings when I talk about it just because, I know how much work that we all put in and how close we came together. And I know what kind of player I was. And I believe that we could have won the national championship had I played that year. We had some studs on the team. We ended up, South Carolina ended up making it to the SEC championship. That's the year of Cam Newton, and we actually lost to Auburn twice. Those are only 2 losses of the season, and I'm sitting there watching on the sideline the whole year, hoping the NCAA would bring me back, or hoping maybe I can come back for a few games, but it just didn't happen. But Marshawn Lattimore, we had Lattimore, we had Melvin Ingram, we had Stephon Gilmore, we had some really key players that can help shift the whole program. And so, even though I wasn't a part of it, I do think that, being a part of that 2007 class, I was a part of the shift of growing at South Carolina, at least.
Yeah, that South Carolina team had some dogs, and, before Marshawn's that devastating injury, I mean, he was going to be that guy for years to come. And that was just awful to see. Was that the same year in 2010, or was that the next year?
Actually, he ended up getting hurt that next year.
Yeah, that's okay.
And of course, it was one of those situations where it brings things back in perspective. Like, man, you could go out with an injury where you'll never be the player you were before. Yeah. And I've seen that happen to guys. So that was one of those things where I couldn't feel too sorry for myself because. It can always, you look at somebody else's situation, it could always be different.
Yeah, and then, I mean, so we'll kind of, now we'll talk about today's South Carolina Gamecocks. And Spencer Rattler is the quarterback over there who was, considered to be a top guy in last year's draft. And then, there was a falling out of Oklahoma. Now he's with South Carolina. And he had that one game where he threw 5 touchdowns, something like this last year. But what are your thoughts on him and his journey upcoming?
He's a heck of a talent, and he's down there with Coach Beamer, who was there when I was at South Carolina as an assistant. I love Coach Beamer. I love Beamer ball, the confidence those guys play with. I applaud him for coming back to school for another year. That's a big deal. I think he knows he has some unfinished business, or maybe he's got some points he wants to prove to himself. And of course, it's not too difficult of a decision to come back when you got NIL deals and you get money. Yeah. It makes that decision a lot easier. So, I'm happy for these guys. I'm excited to see what they got going on. The SEC is one of those places you never know. You can always hang your hat on Alabama and LSU, but even now with the transfer portal, you have no clue who's going to come out on top, right? So it makes it a little more exciting, a little more disparity across the league. So it should cause for some interesting competition.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, we'll stay on this quarterback train now, and we'll go back to your former Steelers quarterback, future Hall of Famer, Ben Roethlisberger. So what was that experience like playing with him and kind of learning from it? And that was in the Bruce Arians days, like you said, and you know how tight both of them still are to this day. What was that like?
Well, it was intimidating at first. Obviously, them these guys have won Super Bowls together. I get there, the room is Hines Ward, and you got Mike Wallace, who was the guy at that time, and Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders. So, but immediately I caught on that, Bruce Arians and Coach Tomlin, they'll give you praise, but they didn't just give you praise because of your name. You had to go out there and prove yourself. And so once I started performing in training camp and during practice and started catching my footing on the field, I felt very comfortable with that group. And a guy like Ben really likes you if you can play.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I noticed. You got guys, obviously. My first year was Antonio Brown's second year. And so, me and Antonio grew pretty close, and we started to grow together and started to catch steam. And I realized that, hey, this is the place to be because there's no politics going on. If you can play, you'll be on the field. Ben will vouch for you. Coach Arians will vouch for you, man. And, of course, Ben is such a great field general. He made the game a lot easier for me. So I like to tell people I came into the 2011 season as a rookie, and by the time I left at the end of the season, I was a veteran.
Yeah.
That one season can change a lot from a mindset perspective.
Yeah, you are now the second player because obviously, we just did an episode with Kevin Dotson, and he described Ben in the same way. He was that general on the field, and I guess it was your only touchdown in your NFL career against Kansas City and
regular season. I like to throw that asterisk in there. Yeah.
So, and I mean, you caught a touchdown from Ben.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how else could you better write your, I guess, first touchdown and in that hostile environment in Kansas City, and that touchdown ultimately won the game for Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, man, that was another one of those picturesque moments where the whole thing leading up to it made it even more impactful for me.
Yeah.
Being in Kansas City, we're on the road. Antonio actually had some family who lived in Kansas City, so him being one of my closest friends, I tagged along with him the day before the game and went and met some of his family, and we had an autograph signing at a local Steelers bar in Kansas City.
Yep.
And that was my first autograph signing as a rookie. And I distinctly remember people giving me their jerseys to sign and giving me stuff to sign, and they didn't really quite know who I was. And I remember one kid told me he put his jersey out and he kind of snatched it back and he said, "Have you scored any touchdowns?" I was like, well, no, not yet. I caught a pass, but da-da-da. And he was so uninterested. He was like, I don't really know who you are. And he takes his jersey and keeps walking and goes and gets it signed by Antonio. And I kind of felt dejected at the moment, but I was like, you know what? He's right. I haven't actually done anything worthy of signing on this jersey yet. So, that was definitely motivation. And for me to, 24 hours later to catch my first touchdown pass in a hostile environment like that on Sunday Night Football, it was a big deal. And instead of course, thinking of my parents and thinking of all the people I knew at home watching, the first person who I thought about was that kid from the night before. Like, hey, man, I scored that touchdown now, kid.
Hey, where's the jersey? Let me bring it back.
Yeah, give me the jersey now. Let me see if I can do it now. But,
yeah.
It's funny because as athletes, we find any little thing that can motivate us and being ready. And I remember that pregame speech that Coach Tomlin gave the night before at the hotel about A players making A plays. Mm-hmm. And he distinctively said, hey, Timmons, I expect him to go out there and be an A player. James Harrison, Ben, you're an A player. We expect a lot out of you. And he made a reference like, hey, we're not expecting Wes to go out there and win the game for us. And, he used me as a reference of not being an A player.
Yeah.
And that also bothered me. So, it was a lot of different triggers going into that game where in my head I said, I got to make something happen. So I won't be looked at as just a side thought because I believed in myself.
Yeah, and that just sounds like Mike T at his fine. That was him trying to tap into to what he knew you could do.
Reverse psychology.
Yeah,
I didn't know it at the time, but it worked.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's an awesome story to hear. Just because I think everybody knows Mike Tomlin's one of the greatest coaches of all time. His track record speaks for itself. The way they battled back last year to go above 500, almost make the playoffs. So, kind of this last topic we'll go over now then is this current Steelers team. What are your thoughts on this year's Steelers?
Well, after seeing how they came together last year, I don't think any team would have wanted to see them going into the playoffs and how they were playing and coming together. It was one of those things like, hey, if they can get in there, they can make some noise.
Yeah.
But now I think that has propelled them for this upcoming season, and that's really super exciting to see. They got the new tight ends, got the offense starting to click. Now, of course, selfishly, I would say, I'd love to see myself out there, because I'm still training, and I never officially retired. And, this is, like you mentioned earlier before, I used to be very heavy my first years coming into the league. I actually almost reached the 300-pound point until I started getting into health and wellness and taking care of my body. So, at this juncture in my career, I can do things now that I couldn't do when I came into the league. So when I'm looking at the team, I see definitely where I'll be able to help from a tight end standpoint. Of course, they got the new guy out there, and we all know the Patriots dynasty that started with two dominant tight ends at the helm, right?
Yeah.
Back there with Tom Brady. So that's one key that I could see could help them out, a two tight end game with the running back on offense, the defense coming into their own. You got a field general like Minka back there calling the shots. The secondary getting stronger and better, and with the linebackers, man, it's I'm excited to see how they operate, because I think it's a great balance of young and old, and younger and elder players. You don't want to call them old.
Yeah.
But having that balance on a team is super important when it comes to the success of the organization.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of hope out of Kenny Pickett last year with his 2 game-winning drives back-to-back. He was the first rookie to have 2 game-winning drives in back-to-back games, and the first one was off the extreme loss of Franco Harris, and it happened to be the game that we were retiring his jersey, and it just sucks knowing that he wasn't there to get his moment in his jersey, because, as you know, the Steelers don't retire anybody's jersey. There's, I think, 3: Mean Joe, Franco, and then
Bradshaw.
Nope, Bradshaw's not retired. Not officially. Not officially.
Well, no, I haven't seen anybody wear number 12.
Yeah, so they do this like unofficial thing, like you'll never see somebody wear 7 again. And I think that's a jersey they'll end up retiring one day, officially. But Ben, Terry, you don't see anybody wearing number 12 anymore because he's unofficially retired. But
yeah,
Kenny Pickett looks like a guy. He's got that swagger and confidence, and I like the kind of his mannerisms and the way he approaches it. It reminds me, and as a Steelers fan, I hate saying anything Tom Brady, but he's got Tom Brady mannerisms to him, to his game. Yeah. But with that being said, you talked about, we talked about your playing days as a Steeler. We talked about South Carolina. We talked about the current thoughts on this Steelers team. You're coming up undrafted, and that process, your first touchdown, the little kid who didn't want you to sign his jersey. So now I want to bring to everybody's attention, you talked about your health kick recently, where you were almost up to 300 pounds last year and everything like that. You have Weslye.com, and off of that, you have produced the West Juice.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to elaborate on that?
Of course, man. I love the fact that you brought it up, man. Yeah, if everybody can see at home there, man, we got the West Juice, all natural superfood powder, man, built around gut health, We got probiotics, clears brain fog, energy, man, a little bit of everything. And it's all plant-based, right? 100% vegan. I don't like to call it a detox because a lot of people in their brain hear detox and they might think something different, but it's pretty much your daily greens intake. Of course, we know how much people and children love to eat their vegetables, right? So this is something that is a lot more compact, but impactful just as much, and nonetheless. And me being from North Carolina, and understanding how our economy is pretty much run off of pork and tobacco, right? It's not necessarily the healthiest state, especially when you get to the South and how we eat. So we need something to combat that on the opposite end. And so with the help of my co-founder, Dr. Charlie Ware here in Hollywood, Florida, he's an expert on epigenetics, all things holistic health. He helped me find this concoction. I call it the green gold. Because it's got 14 superfood ingredients in it, man, based around a little bit of everything. And it has me feeling great, keeps me regulated. I have 2 children. My son's birthday is today, actually. Shout out to my son, Sebastian.
Happy birthday.
He just turned 9 years old. My daughter, Cameron, she's 8. And I make sure they both take the West Juice as well, man, because, I like to say health is wealth and not much else. Because especially after playing in the National Football League, where injuries, like Coach Tomlin would say, injuries are just as much a part of the game as tackling and catching. Mm-hmm. And, we oftentimes, a lot of players, especially in the professional realms, don't understand what they're putting in their bodies. And they don't understand. I used to think milk helped me recover faster, right? But now we know that, milk, cow's milk is actually very acidic and can actually be a deterrent from you healing quicker. So there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to healing and taking care of our bodies. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to create West Juice. Yeah,
that's awesome to hear that you're, trying to help everybody's, health. I mean, you're an advocate for it, Like you said, I'm pretty sure your weight loss is attributed to the West Juice.
Yeah, absolutely. My weight loss, my body regulation, but of course, I also tell people that it's a combination of many things, right? Also what you put into your body, but also how you're thinking. Meditation is very important to me. And with my colleague Christine, we hosted a yoga retreat in Egypt back in November. Yeah. And, it's super important for people to be able to de-stress, because sickness and weight gain can also be attributed to stress. And so a lot of people are going to the gym and they're going on diets and they're wondering why they're not losing weight. It's because their mindset is not conducing an environment in their body to lose the weight or to be healthier, because, stress hormones can take over. Like they say, the body keeps the score. So we have to understand that it's a little bit of everything that goes into it. And everything matters, but that's where balance comes in. You got to be able to balance it out.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And you brought up you're from North Carolina. So fun fact, when I hit up Weslye on Twitter about a week ago, or it was about 2 weeks ago now, but we exchanged numbers, started texting. I noticed he had that 919. I was like, hey, I had a 919, and I lived in Goldsboro, North Carolina for about 12 years growing up. So that
Goldsboro.
That was just fun to see. And I live in Colorado now, so I don't see many 919 numbers anymore.
Yeah, what a coincidence. When I saw you, I thought it was a typo. I'm like, you got the same area code as me. So, shout out to all my people out there in the Bull City and the Raleigh-Durham area. Much love out there, and I'll be back doing a lot of things in the community back in that area. Hopefully this summer.
Yeah, and on that note, we're gonna wrap this episode up. Wes, I'll have you stick around so we can have the recordings load and save and all that fun stuff. It was a great episode. We had former Steelers tight end and Colts tight end, Weslye Saunders, on the show. I had a blast. For those who will watch this in the coming future, hopefully you get to watch our live stream that we are about to do on all Steeler Nation platforms. So, Wes, if you got anything to say to the people before we close this out?
Yeah, Kaleb. Hey, I appreciate what you're doing, man. Keep it up. Best of luck to you on the show. Thank you for having me, and everybody checking in. Y'all know I wore my special gold yellow hoodie today, just to be appropriate. Depending on who you ask in the city, it's gold. But obviously black and yellow sounds good on the Wiz Khalifa song. So shout out to Steeler Nation, man. All the love. Even though I wasn't there for a long time, I was there for a good time. And you'd be surprised, man. People don't forget a face and they don't forget a name. And Pittsburgh is one of those cities that still shows me a lot of love. And my daughter is up there still at school, so I'm up in the Pittsburgh area quite often. So anybody watching this, man, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always doing something in the greater Pittsburgh area. And Kaleb, maybe you have me on the show some other time, man. Maybe we make this a regular thing.
Oh yeah, we'll have to, especially during the season. We're gonna have to get those former Steelers players' reactions and all that fun stuff. I mean, yeah, it was a great episode. Loved having you on. Love having you in my corner. This was great, and I can't wait to do this again.
Sounds great, Kaleb. I appreciate it, man. Thank you, guys.